Okay, example 4. Two shims are to have a combined thickness of 0.090 inches. The larger shim must be 3.5 times as thick as the smaller shim. So, it says, hint, write two separate equations. So let's take a look at this idea. We're talking about two shims. You guys know what a shim is? A shim is a piece of wood that usually rather thin, and then it's shaved down to make a very, very thin, like, triangle. And it slides under things to add a little bit of height where you need it. And usually they're used to help center doors. That's the main purpose of shims. But any place you need to fill a gap with something and just kind of fit it in there, it's kind of just, I don't know, they're about maybe that long, and they kind of look like this from the side.
It looks like a door stone.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. From the side it looks like that, but then there's a little depth to it, like so. So it kind of looks like that. And anyway, and this is probably 1/8 of an inch. I mean, it's not very thick there. So, and then, again, they're just used to help center doors. So you take 3 or 4 shims and kind of stick them in there and kind of space the door out is what they're used for. All right, but anyway, we have 2 of these shims. They're supposed to have a combined thickness of 0.090 inches. Then they're talking about the larger shim is 3 times as thick as the smaller shim. So even though we're talking about 2 shims, they give us more direction on the second sentence. They talk with the larger shim and the smaller shim. Okay? The green and yellow highlights are the same thing we're talking about with the blue highlight. They're just being more specific here. So in general, when I'm looking at how many things do I not know, I've got exactly 2 shims. One's larger, one's smaller. So if this is me picking variables to represent these things, I'd probably go L equals larger shim, and maybe S equals smaller shim. X and Y works also. It doesn't matter. But I like, again, to use letters that might be more meaningful to me. So I do have 2 equations happening here. So first equation is right here. Two shims are to have a combined thickness of 0.090 inches. So combined thickness, what operation are we thinking of when we say combined thickness?
Addition.
We all think addition, right? We're combining the thicknesses of these. We want to get combined thickness. We want to add the thicknesses, and L and S represent the thicknesses of each individual shim. So that red circle there is going to be the larger shim thickness plus the smaller shim thickness would equal the combined thickness. All right? It didn't say add the larger and the smaller to get that. So it didn't say the larger shim plus the smaller shim equals 0.090, but again, the wording implies that's what's happening. Combined thickness implies addition. Addition of what? The 2 shims to make what? 0.090. All right, so again, sometimes the wording is a little more abstract, but it still creates a thought or an equation based on what the idea of the sentence is. The second sentence is more straightforward. The larger shim must be 3.5 times as thick as the smaller shim. Now, times as thick, times as big, times as whatever. Anytime you see times as something, those are a little bit tricky. Okay, here's what I want you to consider. Okay, and obviously they have the words larger and smaller, so it's not that hard in this case. But which one of these is bigger, L or S? L is bigger, right? And I'm multiplying 3.5 times something to get something else, right? That's what's happening here. The larger shim must be 3.5 times as thick as the smaller shim, right? So if I write L equals S, I know that's false, right? Because they're not equal to each other. But I got to multiply one of these 2 numbers, either L or S, times 3.5, right? if I take the smaller times 3.5 to get bigger, that makes more sense than taking the bigger times 3.5 to get smaller, right? So when you got to multiply by something, the smaller times the number should make the bigger. So L equals 3.5S will be the other equation. They didn't ask me to solve that. If they did, the next step in the problem would be, since L plus S equals that and L equals that, I would take this expression 3.5S and change that L into 3.5S. Like so. It's called substitution. And then you have the ability to figure out what S is all by itself, and then multiply that by 3.5, you can find out what L is also. So it's possible to solve both of those shim lengths based on that math there. But again, we're not going there today, we're just writing the equations at this point. So identify your unknowns, and then write an equation using those unknowns. That's your assignment tonight. You should be able to do that.